Misleading thumbnail, but that's fine. Oh, we're live. We're live on my computer.
Oh, my
Great.
computer live stream offline. Oh, wait. Okay. So
Hello, welcome. I am actually not going to be the tutor for today. I'm about to hand over this computer to our tutor for today. His name is Chris Lele. He's an expert on the SAT, and he's going to help by teaching you a little bit of stuff about the SAT that you're probably taking tomorrow, as well as answering any questions that you have about the SAT. So I'm going to hand this over to him now.
Thanks, Lena. As Lena just said, I am Chris. Oops, I'm hiding on the screen a little higher. Okay, so I'm Chris, the SAT expert at Magoosh. Thank you very much for being here this afternoon. I know that tomorrow's a big day for you guys and girls out there, so I want to make sure that you're not stressing out too much. Just want to reinforce that I know this is a stressful experience, but stressing out doesn't necessarily help us do better. So take a nice deep breath, relax, and we're going to talk today about high-level overviews of each section, what to do the night before the test, and of course, the questions that you can submit to me and that I will answer. So please ask away, but I will definitely talk about SAT-related stuff throughout. And so when I see a question pop up, I'll stop what I'm talking about and address that question and answer it, and any other follow-up questions that person or others might have. Okay, so let's start off just talking about night before the test. It's great that you're doing this because you're going to get some tips. There's not too much you can apply, and so I'm going to keep that in mind. I'm not going to tell you, well, here's a 1-week study plan to help you get better at math. I know that's not going to really help because you don't have 1 week, you have 1 day. But I'm going to give you just high-level approaches to the test and what you can think about tomorrow when you're taking the test that can hopefully help you score higher. So that's where I'm going to take it from now. I'm going to say, take the learnings from today, apply them tomorrow, but don't wake up. Don't wake up going home really early in the morning thinking that it's time to do SAT prep. Because I know when you're taking a test or a quiz in school, you wake up early, right? The day of, if you have to study. And so you drill, short-term memory, you're holding it there until you sit down and take the quiz. Hopefully you get an A. But the SAT is a little bit different than that. You should already have this knowledge built up over time, so you're not cramming a set amount of knowledge. Rather, you're performing, and it is a test of endurance. So do not try to get up early and learn new SAT stuff. Okay. So that said, what am I going to do in terms of a high-level overview of the SAT? I want to start with the reading section. Why? Well, the reading section is the very first thing you will see tomorrow. You sit down and take the test. You fill out all the bubbles in the Scantron. The proctor, that is the person leading the class, yelling out the timer, hopefully not yelling, but saying the time, tell you when to drop your pencils, etc. That person is called the proctor. And when they tell you to open the test booklet to page 1 and you now may begin, the first thing you see is the reading section. So what are you going to see? Well, you're going to see lots of passages, obviously. You will have 65 minutes to read through these passages and answer the questions. And that is an awful lot of time. You can't really take a break in there the way you would if they called time for another section and said take a 5-minute break. So prepare yourself for that mentally. And you might even want to give yourself a little break for 30 seconds. After you, say, have done your third passage, just take a brain break if that helps you. So you can do that. Know that you don't have to do this 65 minutes nonstop, because that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get farther after 65 minutes than if you take a 30-second break at some point in between. But that's up to you. So what you should be doing is looking at the passages and trying to figure out, is this a passage that you feel comfortable while you are reading it? Is it a passage that is very intimidating for you? Because if a passage is very hard and you read it and you have no idea what it's talking about, you have an option. You have an option to actually stop reading that passage. It could be maybe the second paragraph, and you can actually go on to another passage instead. The way the SAT reading section is outlined is these passages are not all difficult. They know that. They're going to put a tough passage in there somewhere. There are 5 total passages. It's usually not the first passage. The first passage is usually fiction. Sometimes it's modern fiction, which is probably the easiest thing to read out of the 5 reading passages. Sometimes it's old school fiction, so like 19th century British literature, which can be a little bit harder, but probably not going to be the hardest of the 5. Start off with that passage. Remember that each question that you answer is worth the same. You don't get extra credit for answering the hard question, and you don't get docked negative points for skipping a question or essentially guessing. There are no negative points for guessing and moving on. So remember, it's a pacing test. You need to try to get through or at least see as many questions that you have a chance of answering correctly. So don't spend too much time on one question. Flip side of that, though, is you don't get extra points for finishing everything. It's not one of those tests. So get as far as you can, try to be accurate. Don't dawdle too long on one question type because you're not going to get more points for that question, and it can also throw you off psychologically. So if you're not sure, you spent 4 minutes biting your fingernails over this one question, and you're moving on now, you're in a very different mental state than you were before. So maybe give yourself a time limit of 2 minutes, put a little check mark there, and that can be a signal for yourself to come back if you have time at the end of the reading section. So that is essentially high level. And as I said, I'm going to give you high level stuff today because I don't want to say, okay, here are some concepts. You need to understand what a tone question is and you need to practice. No, none of that because it's the day before the test. So again, high level. Let's move on to the next section. And I might come back to the reading section, especially if you have questions. And so get those questions in now. If you're wondering something about the reading section, I just talked about it. Was I vague about something? Please ask a question and I will clarify any points. So don't see any questions yet, which is totally fine. No worries. I'm going to go on to the writing section. The second section you will see. So you get a double dose of verbal. Important to know. The writing section. Why is it called the writing section? I don't know. I didn't make up this test. But it's, oh, look. I'll come back to that in a second. I got a question here. Any rules, math formulas provided in the math set exam? Yeah, that's a great question. There are. When you open the test booklet to that first page, you're going to see formulas, usually for geometry stuff mainly. Area of a triangle, square, that kind of stuff. Solids, Pythagorean theorem, 45, 45, 90 triangles. And so you will have a cheat sheet there. So don't feel you have to memorize those main formulas. But if there's a formula or something that you have memorized that you found useful and it's not in that first part, the math formula part, when you open up section 3 or section 4, if it's not there, then memorize that. But I would say most of the major stuff they've got covered there, so no need to worry too much. Cool. I don't see any other questions. So I'm going to pick back up where I left off, which was with the writing section. It's called writing, but it's essentially grammar. So that's what they call it, writing, not grammar. But this is where you have 44 questions. You have 35 minutes. Again, pacing, but it's not quite as exhausting, not quite as much reading as the reading section. But still, you just did the reading section, so you're tired. So lots of reading to go through at the writing section. It's a long paragraph, or actually a few paragraphs. And there are parts that are underlined. And your job is, of course, to figure out what is wrong in that underlined section. One of the 11 questions that is for each of these passages will be notated in the passage so you know what that question is referring to. Now, high-level strategies for the writing section. What I would say in terms of pacing is don't feel you have to read the entire thing. It might be interesting, but there are only a few questions in that when you read them that you actually have to deal with that specific part. So if you read the entire passage, you're potentially wasting time. But if you get to, say, question number 4 and it says, what's the best order of sentence, 3 in the second paragraph, then yeah, you do have to read that entire paragraph. So you want to make sure that you read judiciously in this section. Oh, look, I have a question here. My first SAT math is in a couple of hours. Whoa, any tips for me? Cool. I guess they're on a different time frame if it's a couple of hours. But again, high-level tips, pacing is huge. Don't feel you have to answer every single question in the math because you don't get extra points for it. Every question is worth the same. In the section 3, the questions get more and more difficult as you do the section. So as you keep reading, you're at 4 or 5, you're going to notice, oh, these questions are getting tougher. And that's fine. It's supposed to do that, so don't freak out. But in terms of pacing, if you're on question 7 and you're halfway done in time, then you want to make sure you speed up, because the other questions towards the end are going to be harder. So you do want to give yourself time for those questions. At the same time, make sure you don't just like rush through the section and try to get to the end, because you don't get extra points for the end. So it's really a question of pacing. Be aware of your time. Don't spend too long on any one question, but around the halfway mark of time, know where you are. So if you feel that if you're trying to get a perfect score in the math, then you do want to get to the end of the section. But if you're trying to get like a 550 or 600 and you're on question 8, the halfway point, maybe that's fine as well. Don't rush it if that's the case. Cool. Those are just, again, high-level tips. Know your weaknesses, but a lot of these tips are things that are more about long-term drilling, so I don't want to get too much into that, because this person has 2 hours to go, so they can't really do too much about that. Okay. You may also note that there are a lot of these helpful videos. We have this Magoosh SAT YouTube channel, and I have like last-minute tips. I have last-minute math tips, or things you need to know in the math section, things you need to know in the writing section, and things you need to know in the reading section. So you can go through these like after this video, or even now if I've talked about the things you wanted to hear about. Check out our other videos we have on our channel, and you'll probably find something very helpful there. Again, keep it high level. Don't try to apply something that's last minute, because a lot of these strategies, a lot of the concepts and knowledge you need is something you need to apply over time, like at least a couple of weeks or so. Okay, so it looks like no more videos so far, no more questions so far. But it looks like were they both math questions? Yeah, they were both math questions. I feel like people want me to talk about the math section. Okay, so enough about the writing section high level. More about the math section. At this point, tips to know that section 3 is the no calculator section. So you can't use a calculator. Very important. What to know? What's the takeaway from that? Well, the takeaway would be that these questions aren't super difficult math-wise, so you can figure them out by writing them down on a piece of paper, or even in some cases doing mental math. They're not intended to be super difficult. So don't be freaked out. But know that on section 3, you can't use a calculator. However, in section 4, the final math section, you can use a calculator. So don't feel that don't think that you still have to do everything on paper or in your head. You can actually knock stuff out on the calculator and start doing it, because section 4 is calculator section. Section 3 was not calculator section. So the worst thing to do, of course, is get to section 4 and forget that you can take out your calculator. A good proctor, that is a person leading classroom, a good person will tell you that, but sometimes they might not. So keep that in mind. What else is important on the math sections? Last minute tips. If you are feeling a little bit weak about a subject area, it doesn't hurt this evening. I'm on California time, so it's not even 4 o'clock yet. So I'm not sure where you are, but it doesn't hurt to do some drills. But don't freak out if you miss something. You're just trying to get your brain in practice mode to exercise it. So if you miss stuff, don't worry about it too much. But again, don't stay up late. Don't stay up late studying. It is not a test that you can cram for, that you may have crammed for before and gotten an A on because you stayed up till midnight and then set your alarm clock for 5:42 and then woke up at 5:45 and got out and studied, and then you got an A. It's not that kind of test. Again, it is a test of endurance. So in terms of just looking to see if we have any questions, please get your questions up there. I'm totally happy to answer them any way I can. Please give me your questions. I'm here to help. Other high-level tips from the math section. Section 4 is known for having really long word problems. Section 3, the no calculator section, is quicker. You're just reading 3 or 4 lines tops, sometimes just reading an equation, and you're solving it. But section 4, get yourself ready to read as many as 12 or even 15 lines. That's just laying out the problem. When you do this, make sure to underline the question, because it's easy to forget what you're looking for when you actually get to the question itself and start doing all the math and solving things. You get some number and you're like, well, wait a second, what is this number? What am I looking for? Somebody help me. So to avoid having to read the entire thing again, just underline the question. Remember what it is you're looking for in these really long word problems. And again, pacing on that section is important as well. Know where you are roughly. If you're spending too much time reading, then maybe, and this is a possible strategy, skip the really long word problems. If you have 7 minutes left and there's like 4 really long word problems and 4 shorter problems, go straight to the shorter problems instead of just reading those super long word problems. It's definitely a good way of strategizing your time if you're running out of time. Okay. I still don't see any questions, but let's talk a little bit about the essay. Oh, I got a question. What do I do after I get a bad score back? So it's hard to say exactly what a good score is, bad score. Everyone has their own sense, their own goals. But let's say you get a score you don't like. You call it a bad score. Fair enough. First thing to do is to look at your deadlines. I mean, can you take the test again? It's okay to get a bad score if you could learn from it, if you can figure out why didn't you do that well, what could you have done better. And it could be something like, oh, I didn't sleep that well the night before the test, and I only prepped like 2 days before the test, whatever it may be. But you can use it as a piece of information to help you prepare the next time. The only exception would be is if you are a senior and it's the last possible time that you're taking the SAT, then there's really nothing you could do. I don't want to sound all dire, but that's the last chance you have. But I'd say the majority of students, you can take the SAT again. It's not the end of the world. Schools don't think, oh, they took the SAT for the 3rd time. They don't know what they're doing. That's not true at all. If you improve that 3rd time, and you improve a lot, let's say, that's something that schools see as well if you submit all of your scores to that school. So it's not a bad thing if you improve. So again, figure out why you didn't do well. And if it's a question of preparing more, then know that and start preparing obviously more in advance, and even more in advance than you would think. Maybe start doing SAT prep problems. Give yourself like a problem of the day on, Magoosh. Go to the Magoosh SAT blog, and we have plenty of problems each day you can read on there. And that way you're exposing yourself to SAT over the month. So you're not suddenly preparing 1 week before, because then that becomes a stressful experience again. Another great question. Should I take the ACT? Yes. There are reasons why the answer might be no. Maybe the cost, maybe time. You just don't have the time. There's too much going on in your life, and that just might be the case. But unless you have a really good excuse, you really should take the ACT, because it gives you another opportunity to show colleges that you could do well on these tests. So they're not exactly the same tests. You might do significantly better on the ACT, or vice versa. And by significantly better, I mean overall score as well as the percentile ranking you get, because that's oftentimes what colleges are looking at. So compare your percentile ranking on both tests. Maybe you can take a practice section at home, or even an entire test for the ACT, and then compare that to what you got on the SAT, just to see. But in general, take the ACT as well. It gives colleges another thing to look at, and it gives yourself another chance to do better than you had done percentile-wise on the SAT. Cool. Thank you for that question. Okay. I'm waiting for questions. Ooh, I got one. What should I do 5 minutes before the SAT exam? This one is actually a good question. It's so practical, because you can listen to all this advice, and then you start doing this. It's 3 minutes. 1 minute. I used to run races when I was in high school, and I remember just getting really amped up, and I'm ready to go. Here comes the race, 10 seconds to go. Don't do that on the SAT, because even now I can feel like my physiology just changing a little bit based on how I was breathing, and you saw me. I was kind of exaggerating that, but not really. Unless you're really aware of it, you're not going to catch yourself breathing like that. So my biggest thing is like a few minutes, 5 minutes before the test. Nice. Deep breath. You're not going to fall asleep, but what you're doing is you're managing your heart rate. You see how my voice is slowed down a little bit when I'm talking. That's good. You want to manage that. Because if you don't, and you get to the first passage, you're like, oh my God, in 1932, not a good place to be. So relax, but focus on the breathing specifically. Okay, got another one. What big geometry topic should I focus on? I would say that they like triangles and circles. Old school stuff, meat and potatoes. Triangles and circles. Know area of a circle, area of a triangle. Those problems are going to come up. You might want to know the circumference of the circle as well. You have the formula for 45, 45, 90 triangles there, so you can rely on that. You can also rely on the formula for area of a circle, circumference of a circle. So you have those things, but be comfortable solving those types of questions. Those are kind of the big geometry ones. Secondly, coordinate geometry, coordinate plane. Be comfortable knowing where your negative points are, your X's are, and your Y's are. Just be comfortable with the coordinate plane. Because I can't tell you the exact thing. I can't say, oh, they're going to have like a crazy parabola question, because they probably won't. But if they do, then, yeah, that's going to be a hard question. But that's not something that's generalizable. But what's generalizable is knowing where X and Y is. When they say f of X is equal to 4 on the graph, what does that mean exactly? Just knowing those basic things about coordinate geometry, those are going to help you a lot. And they phrase it better. What are the focuses when it comes to geometry? I think I kind of answered that, but yeah, coordinate geometry and basic geometry shapes, including cubes, so a little three-dimensional action. They'll put that in there as well. So focus on those things. Let's see, what do I do with my brain? Stopped functioning in the middle of the test. So I guess my question is, why did it stop functioning? Let's kind of backtrack. Scene of the crime. Brain is not functioning. Step it back. Why not? Well, did you sleep well? That's my question. If the answer is no, then one thing you can do is don't try to go to bed late tonight. Just try to go to bed early. Don't go to bed super early. Don't get in bed at 8:30 and say, I'm going to sleep 10 hours here. Because then maybe your body's not used to falling asleep that early. But try to at least get about 7.5 hours in there. That's like a good minimum threshold. I think anything below that, you're going to feel groggy. If you can get above 8.5, then perfect. And then, of course, don't try to sleep 10 hours. That might be a little bit too much. And you might be groggy as well. But sleep around that 8-hour mark. That could be one reason why. Another reason why, you didn't have breakfast. Got to the testing center. You went through that reading passage. It was 65 minutes. You're like, yeah, I had the endurance. And then second writing passage, then brain dies, brain malfunctions. Why? No breakfast. Food is that important. And don't just drink something and say, I'll be fine. Because our brain, and we're talking about brain malfunctioning right now, our brain runs on glucose. That's found in food. So you can say, oh, usually, man, I just wake up on Saturday and I have my little half cup of OJ and then I just chill. Well, that's fine. Your body can handle chilling for 4 hours. But when you're taking the SAT, you're not chilling. You're burning glucose. And therefore, you want to eat a big breakfast. But big has asterisk as well, because you don't want to sit there and go like Denny's double grand slam, because then you're going to be feeling groggy as well. So it's kind of that balance, find what that is. Is it just make yourself some eggs, throw them in a little tortilla, and it's a little bit of salsa, not too spicy. Eat that. Have your full cup of OJ. Maybe bring a snack along to the SAT that you can have during the break. Banana's good. And that will deal with the caloric implosion, brain implosion thing. What else? Why else could your brain malfunction? You're just hyperventilating. We talked about that earlier, and you're just losing it. I can't focus. And I think that happens when you reread the same thing over and over again. And then you're reading it the 5th or 6th time, and you're just breathing more and more, and you're getting angry at yourself and your brain. Well, your brain's going to shut down. So if you read something you don't understand, just skip it. You can come back to it. Just read something else. Just don't get overly worked up. Okay, so hopefully those are all the things that can account for your brain imploding morning up. Let's see, what else do we have here? How many questions should I answer to pass the math exam? It's one of those tests where you can't pass fail kind of thing. It's just, what score are you aiming for? It's out of between 200 and 800. 200 is not very good, and that's fine. We all start from somewhere, but most people don't get 200, so don't worry. 800 is super difficult to get. 500 is more average score. I think it's something like 545 or something. But the point is, you want to get a score that's somewhat competitive, but you also want to get a score that's somewhere in your range. If you took a practice test 2 weeks ago and you got 410, and I'm up here saying, okay, well, to get 600, you need to do this. that might not necessarily be your goal. Your goal might be to get 500. So it's really hard to say. But I'm going to use 600 because I'm going to take that average of 500 or 514. I'm going to assume most people are kind of more or less around that. What would you need to do to get to 600, which is a good score, relatively competitive score, 600 plus. And how many questions did you get right? Well, we got 58 questions on the math exam. Ding, 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 like 41. I'd have to look back at the chart, but let's just call it 40. That's a great question. That means you don't have to. Remember we talked earlier about you can guess. It's not going to be penalized, and you don't have to answer every single question that's on the exam in the math section. And so it comes back to, well, if I only need to get about 40 to get my target score, then I can slow down a little bit, not worry about the super hard questions at the end of the math section, but just get the ones right up to about maybe 15 and then kind of guess on the last 5. That's fine because you have a little bit of wiggle room there, right? Same on the 38 question section. So it's a good question. Okay. My English score has stagnated around 7 and I haven't progressed. Yeah, this is definitely happens with certain students, and it makes sense because when you're at 700 really on any section, it's hard to improve. I mean, if you're at 400, you've never prepped. You're like, I don't like SAT, but okay, I'll give it like 2 weeks. And you prep, and suddenly you're at 500. Well, that's good. It's easier to get from 400 to 500 with prep than it is from 700 to 800. 800 is at the very end of the scale. It's that perfection. So my question to you is, and really to anyone who asks me this question, is what are you missing a specific kind of question in the writing section? Is there a pattern to what you're missing? It could be kind of careless errors. Oh, it's always me not reading the right part, or I'm reading too fast and I get something wrong. Or it could be very specific. It could be, well, I'm good at, like, in general, the way things sound. I'm just really, it's almost those punctuations, those semicolons. I'm going to strangle you, semicolon. That's actually good, not for the semicolon, but for you, because you can focus on something very specific, which is your punctuation, your sense of clauses, differentiating semicolon from a colon. So your job then to get from that 700 to maybe at least that 750 is to find that question type that's tripping you up. Could even be a pacing thing. Maybe you're rushing towards the end and then you're not really giving those questions your full attention. And so for each person who has that same question, who's around 700, the answer is slightly different, but find that weak spot or weak spots and focus on those. And when I say focus on those, apply them in practice tests so you can make sure that you're constantly getting better and better. And don't do an entire test necessarily, just do like a writing section exam so you can reflect on it right when you go back and grade it, see what you missed. You can figure out again, did you improve on what you tried to improve on or not? Okay. I like this. I love this, in fact. All these questions here. Woo! Let's see. What do we got next? What score that will guarantee me at any college I want? Honestly, I don't think there's that score. I would say let's do this. I'm going to come up with a hypothetical person. They're totally uninvolved in school. They hate school. Fair enough. Everyone each teach their own. They haven't done any extracurriculars. They're not going to take any AP exams, but they're super smart. They just kind of read. They just like to do math problems in their head all day long. So they have the capability. They come in, they just get a perfect score on the SAT. There are people out there like that. Guess what? It comes time to apply to college. Tell us about yourself. I don't know. I don't really care about things. I don't really have many friends or don't do anything in school, etc. My essay I write is not inspiring, but I have a perfect SAT score. I don't think a lot of schools are necessarily going to take that person. I mean, the Ivy League, Harvards, and Princeton, and Yales. I mean, they want a well-rounded person in addition to a great score. So to answer that question, there is no perfect score. So I hear it says people get rejected from Ivy with 1,600. Someone just said that in there. Yeah, that's the truth because they're looking for a well-rounded individual. If all you have is a perfect SAT score, forget about it. You'll get somewhere. I mean, you're not going to be sweeping garbage on the streets, but you aren't necessarily going to get into an Ivy League school. Okay. Hello, someone says. Hello. Okay, so next question here is, what do you recommend for a 9th grader taking the SAT? Okay, so great. Freshman, thank you for asking the question. What do I recommend? You know, I guess the question is, how much have you prepped? What are you looking for? But I would say don't treat it lightly. Don't just say, hey, this is a walk in the park. It doesn't count. Because that doesn't really give you the information you need. Useful information is how well can you really do on the SAT right now? And so if you put yourself into, you're taking the exam tomorrow, I see. If you give it your all and you don't do as well as you hoped, that's useful information because you know you have to prep more. If you give it all your all and you do really well, that's really good because then you can focus on other stuff besides SAT prep at least and not worry about it too much. You can always take it later when you're a junior and you feel, well, 1490 is a great score, but my counselor saying a 1550 might help me. Well, I got 1490 as a freshman. Maybe I can do 1550 now. So that would make sense. If, again, the only way to find out, though, is if you give it your all. So don't take it lightly. Because if you get a low score, you can just say, yeah, I wasn't trying. And then, should I take the SAT again? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. No, it doesn't really help you. So other general things I could say is takeaways from the test. I don't know if as a freshman, you've probably never taken a full-length SAT before in a testing center. So you're going to learn a lot about how you take tests. And you can use that information after the test to figure out if you're going to retake the test, how to prep. Did you just run out of time on all the sections, sitting in one place for a while? And so you're going to kind of afterwards conduct an investigation of the experience so that you can use that going forward when you prep. Okay. Next question. Is there such thing as strategic guessing on the SAT? Yeah, I'm very happy you answered the question. Yes, there is. The reason, these test questions have 4 answer choices, A, B, C, and D. They are not, A is obviously the right answer if you know what you're looking for, and B, C, and D are completely confusing and difficult, and I don't know, if you don't know what you're looking for, you have no hope. Not at all. Think about it. There are usually 2 answer choices that you can get rid of. In the reading section, they're just irrelevant to the passage. In the math section, they're just maybe too big or too small. You're looking at a triangle with certain numbered sides, and then the answer choice D is just some huge size that's not even possible. You can eliminate. So strategic guessing is eliminating those 1 or 2 wrong answer choices that are more obviously wrong. And sometimes on the harder questions, sure, just 1 that's obviously wrong, and then 3 are hard. But in general, it comes down to 2. 1 of which is the answer, and 1 of which is the trap answer. And if you get it to that point and you can't figure out between A and C, let's say A and C, which one it is, that's fine as well, because you don't want to go back and forth for too long. But now it's a 50-50 because you eliminated those wrong answer choices. So think of it in terms of making it a 50-50. Don't burn your time because time is a precious resource on each section. Circle out one of those answers and move on if you can't resolve it otherwise. Cool. Let's see. Next one. Wow, I got a bunch of things coming in, so I'm trying to figure out where I'm reading from. Let's see. Heard about that. So someone else heard about strategic guessing. So hopefully that answered your question about strategic guessing, what to do. What do you think the average score is for 9th grader? Ooh, I would, who's way smarter than me and knows so much more than me about some of these questions, at least not all these questions, but some of these questions, is Google. So if I were you, I'd just go to Google and say average score, SAT, 9th grader, and see what happens. Because that'll give you all the data you need right there. Thank you. Well, thank you. I got a shout out there, and definitely good luck tomorrow. Love Life. Shout out to Love Life there. So best of luck. Let's go on to the next question. Is it possible to forget everything due to nerves? It's not. It's possible to forget some stuff when you're breathing. It's kind of hyperventilative and breathing too much. When your breakfast has run out or you haven't had breakfast at all yet, it's definitely harder to function. Our brains just don't work that well. But I don't want to be that pessimistic and say you just forget everything. You don't even remember your name. Who am I? I have amnesia. I'm on TV. I'm in some bad show. Everyone gets amnesia. No, you're going to remember a little bit. But the key is, or at least quite a bit, the key is, though, preventing those states from happening by, again, controlling your breathing and making sure you have enough food in your stomach throughout the 4-hour experience, 4+ hours experience of SAT. Okay. Is it true that I get scored on writing my info, like my name and stuff? No. I'm so happy I'm here. I mean, some of these questions are just great because I can kind of lead people away from misconceptions. This is like one of those urban myths. Yeah, if you use cursive on your name, oh man, they'll dock you. Oh, really? Yeah, you'll get like 300. No, don't do it. No, I don't know where you read that, but it's 100% wrong. Write your name. Just make sure it's legible. If they can't read your name and you bubble in all weirdly, then they're not going to know who you are. But otherwise, You are not scored on how you write, on your penmanship at all. Cool. Let's see. Yeah, again, just a little shout out to the Magoosh videos. We have a lot of videos that are very specific to like questions. So if you have a question, go to check out our SAT YouTube channel. If it's a question about math, like things to know, top 5 things to know for math or something, enter that in, search for it in YouTube, and you'll find a Magoosh video that's very similar to that. So we have a lot of these tailored videos. So definitely check those out as well when this is done. Okay, I got 1130 my first go, but brought it up by 300 points. I guess not necessarily much a question, but definitely a great testimonial in the sense that you can boost your score up quite a bit. I mean, 300 points is a great improvement. And so shout out to that person. So definitely something, SAT is something you can improve at a lot. Next question, do you recommend studying the day before? So I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I think it's important to go over again. It's the idea that the SAT is a sort of a finite test, something where you have this body of knowledge that your teachers try to put into your head over the last 3 months, and you're going to go home, open up your textbook, look at your notes, and super cram, and then you're just going to wake up in the morning and you're going to dump all that information out, and maybe you won't get an A, but you'll get like a B+, and then a day later someone will ask you about it, and you'll be like, I have no idea. Oh, oops, sorry. Oh, water. Hold on. Excuse me. Usually doesn't happen. But someone's getting me water. Thank goodness. Okay, where was I? Something about. Oh, hold on. Whoa, I'm alive. I promise. I'm alive. I'll make it. Okay. Studying the day before. That's right. Yeah. Don't have a coughing fit during the test. But my point was, don't study that much the night before, the day before, because you're not trying to accumulate this knowledge that you're going to be asked about that you can just dump on the paper. It's very different from that. It's more of a skill-based thing. It's more analytical thinking. And that's something that you're not going to be able to learn in one night. But it's something that will be compromised. Thank you for the water. It'll be something that'll be super compromised if you stay up all night trying to study for this test. So don't do that. You're only hurting yourself. Well, let's drink my water. Okay, let's see. Is it impossible to get more than 400 points? I got a 9. Okay, I'm going to reinterpret. I'm assuming this person means, is it possible to get more than a 400-point increase? Which makes sense. So they got 960 in the past, or on their PSAT. Got it. Yeah, so 400-point increase is possible. Someone had a 300-point increase before. My best teaching this new version of the SATs, it's been a couple years, was last year. I want to say someone got around that. I want to say 360, 380 point improvement. And that was just out of a class of maybe 20, 25 people. So yeah, definitely. It's a question of preparing, using the right resources, being consistent, doing all the stuff I talked about today. It's not easy. No one's going to say it's easy. But if you're starting around a 960, you definitely have a lot of room to grow. And getting to a 1360 is something you can definitely do with practice and time. Okay. What advice will you give to an international student taking the SAT? You know, it depends on the international student, but I would say that usually the verbal section is the biggest struggle. And if you are taking the test tomorrow, I mean, that doesn't help too much because you don't have time to prepare for it. As I said, don't prepare tonight. Don't try to ramp it up. But if you are going to take the test again, or if you're not taking tomorrow's SAT, what you can do is focus on these sections. SAT, the reading you need for the SAT. It's not like every kind of reading. It's a very specialized reading. The passages they choose are very consistent. They come from certain categories. Get good at reading SAT passages. And of course, get good at answering SAT questions and knowing what the traps are. So if you do that as an international student, even if your English isn't super strong, but if you get good at SAT verbal and focus just on that, you can definitely improve. That would be my feedback or advice to that person. Okay. Should you take the SAT with or without essay? And this is a great question. It's a really hard question to answer. I would say know what schools that you are, or which schools that you are applying to. Do they require the SAT essay? That's your first step. If they do, and you really want to go to the schools, then you have no choice, and the answer is yes. If they don't, but they say recommended, not mandatory, but recommended, and it is a competitive school, and the rest of your transcript is, you're a strong student, but for this school, it's not an easy shoo-in, then if it's recommended, then take the SAT essay. If you are, let's see, if you are a junior, or actually, no, let's back up. If you are a freshman or sophomore, not a junior, but if you're a freshman and a sophomore, I would actually nudge you to take the SAT essay. If you haven't signed up for it, obviously for tomorrow you can't do it. But in general, the reason I would do this is because the schools, the universities, colleges that require the SAT essay, it shifts over time. Like for instance, Harvard just dropped it. Harvard's like, it's not mandatory anymore. So like, whoa. But your dream school, the school you're really looking to get into right now, let's just say it's Cornell or something. They say, oh, SAT essay isn't required. And you're like, great, I'm a freshman or sophomore. Well, over the course of a year or two, they could change that policy easily. And then all of a sudden you have to take the entire SAT again. Let's say you took it as a sophomore and you did really well. And I have to sit through the entire thing again just to do the essay. It's kind of a little bit So again, that really depends on what you're going for. Final scenario, if you look up and none of the schools that you're looking at require it or even recommend it, and they're not hyper competitive, but you want to go to those schools, then don't take the SAT essay. No need to. Okay, what do we got here? Next one up. Should we take the SAT? No. So a lot of questions here. Are practice tests the best way to prepare for the SAT? Thank you for that question. Yes, but I would say they are, as long as you have done some prep and that you're already comfortable with the way the test is set up and that you're trying to learn some concepts and some strategies and you've been applying these. The best thing to do if you've been doing a little bit of that work is to take a practice test. If all you do is say, okay, SAT tutor told me the best way to prep is take a practice test. So I took a practice test, okay, did it, whatever. Then I went and took the test. I didn't do any better. Well, go figure. So you definitely want to be learning strategies, learning concepts, and applying them, practice exercises, building up a little bit of strength, and then taking a practice test. But I'm not done yet. The next part, after you take a practice test at home, is to very meticulously, very carefully go through and review the mistakes you made, or even questions where you weren't sure about but got the right answer. Try to figure out why were you uncertain? Why might you have missed it? Or in the case that you did miss the question, why did you miss it? Was it the trap answer you fell for? It probably was. Well, why? What about the trap answer made you pick it? Because you remember that question. You were going back between A and B. Really try to figure out why you picked A, the wrong answer, instead of B, the right answer. And do that with each question. Treat it very carefully. Don't rush through it. It's a process that you want to take seriously. And that, if you follow those three things, then the SAT practice test is the best thing to help you raise your score and do well testing. Okay, can you take, I see something that says better hurry. Okay, that's not a question. Can you take the SAT subject test instead of the SAT, or do you need to take both? That I am not certain of, and I again would look at the school and ask Mr. Google. Ask Mr. Google that question about SAT subject test and essay and the SAT, and then look up the school and see what their requirements are. And if there's a few schools, then look up a few schools and see what they are. But I'm not sure based on the school. Okay, what should I bring? Oh, we have a video, right? We have a video on our YouTube channel about what you need to bring the day of the test. We have a checklist. Super, super helpful, because if you forget some of these things, like a valid photo ID where the person actually looks like you. So if you dyed your hair purple, took a picture, and now hair's normal and it's curly, they might not know it's you. So, but it's a lot more complicated than that. We have a checklist that we have just put here in the chat. Oh, in 1 second, we're gonna put it in the chat, so it's gonna be there. Okay. Let's see. Can sleep drastically improve SAT score? Again, it's a question of how much. It's like, what is that perfect thing? It's not, I slept for 13 hours, SAT here. Oh, wait, it's 1 in the afternoon. No, I'm kidding. But too much sleep can hurt you, just as not enough sleep can hurt you. I think the magic window, just trying to get between 7 and 9. If I'm going to be kind of loose with it, 7 and 9. Some people need a little bit less than others, so you know where you are there. So if you're kind of one of those longer sleepers, then yeah, you might need close to 9. But around the 6.5 hour mark, that's where it's going to start hurting you. Even those people get by with 7.5 hours, you start really losing out around 6, 6.5. Below 6, it's not good. Too much sleep. Don't go over 9 hours. It's not necessarily going to help you. So sleep is definitely a big part of things. Okay. There's the last minute tips and stuff to bring video in the chat screen. So check that out. It's under the Magoosh SAT icon there. What is my background? Oh gosh, I don't know. It was ethnically or like what did I study in school or what was my career? Very, very open question. So I'm not sure I'll answer that one right now. In the video, there's a link up. That's more there. Thanks. School-wise, cool. I went to UCLA for my background. I study psychology and learning. Makes sense to me, what I do. Now is the idea of like how do people learn? What are some good advice and tips? And obviously the psychology angle is being able to put yourself inside people's shoes and try to figure out, what can go wrong based on what you're thinking. And often, as I've said here, on what you're breathing or how you're breathing can go wrong as well. So it kind of fits nicely together. Okay, is 1 month enough time to study for the SAT? This is a good question. It all comes down to what your goals are, what you're trying to do. But I'd say 1 month is a good amount of time. You would have a 1 month study schedule for the SAT so you can follow that day by day, go through, use our product, and hopefully improve your score. I'm confident you'll improve your score doing that. But if you're a person a second ago said, I want a 400-point improvement, they're starting at 960. I think a month is a great start. See where you get to after a month. If you're at 960 and get to 1150, that's good. But it's not enough. I mean, that's actually great. That's almost 200 points, 960 to 1150. But you still have 100, what is that, 150 or 200 more points to go. There goes my math. 200 points to go. And you're going to need more than that 1 month, which is totally fine. Then, book another month. Maybe even need a month after that. Maybe 3 months is the window for you. So again, it depends on where you are and what your goals are. But I'd say 1 month is a good, safe time for most people. You only need to take the math portion. Well, yeah, 1 month should be good then. Okay, great. I think we're getting close to the wrap-up time. One thing I didn't talk about, which I can talk about now, is the essay portion. It is optional, as I mentioned earlier. What it is, though, at a high level, is you are reading someone else's essay about how they persuade their audience. And your job is to analyze how they went about persuading their audience. Your job is not to present your own opinion on the issue. It's very important. So remember that. Do not present your own opinion. Rather, analyze the analysis or the persuasion that the other person is using. When you're doing that, these essays are usually pretty long that you're analyzing. Don't try to analyze every little bit. It's not like a list. Oh yeah, they did 7 or 8 things throughout the essay to influence us about issue, whatever it might be, about the environment. I'm going to just list in my essay each issue or each part of the essay that they try to persuade us. They persuaded us here because they try to use certain language that showed urgency. The next paragraph, they try to persuade us. I see a lot of people doing that. That's why I say that. It's not about trying to list all these things. It's rather picking a few of the main things that essay uses, and that essay uses perhaps throughout. It's not about going through each paragraph and listing off what the essay does. So know your persuasive techniques. That's what I'm moving on to next now, one final thing here with the essay. What persuasive techniques are there? We call these rhetorical devices or strategies. And if you sign up for a Magoosh subscription and use our product, we just put in these new SAT lessons where I talk about all these rhetorical devices. But essentially, people use logic to persuade us. They use emotion to persuade us. They use authority to persuade us. And they use word choice, which can fit into emotion as well, the words that they use. The people that they quote, going back to authority, that's also very important. Knowing how they use those throughout the essay, just focusing on 3 or 4, no more than 4, of the main things that they're doing in that essay, and then writing your essay around that is the way to go about it. So again, high level, not going to try to make you a better writer overnight, but I'm going to take one last question before I sign off here. And it says, I know this is for the SAT, but do you recommend taking the ACT? I'd answered that earlier, but I'll totally answer it again. In a nutshell, yes. Unless, and I mentioned this before, unless there's just time constraints, money constraints, you can't take it. It's just not going to work out, then don't. But if those are not a problem, you have all year to take it, by all means, sign up for the ACT, because it gives you another opportunity to provide colleges with data about your potential, how good you are at something. And you might have just done better percentile-wise. It's not about score, because the scores are totally different, but percentile-wise, how you did versus other students. You might just do much better on the ACT for whatever reason than the SAT. But the only way to know that is to actually take the SAT, or at least take it at ACT practice exam to see how you do percentile-wise. But if you're studying for the SAT, the tests are similar enough that that knowledge is going to help you on the ACT, and vice versa. If you're studying for the ACT and you're wondering, should I take the SAT? Then yes, you should do that for the same reason that you should take the ACT if you're taking the SAT. Okay, that's it today. Again, best of luck, everyone. I really appreciate these questions. These were great questions. I think everyone listening got a lot of help from the questions that people asked. So thank you again for that. And best of luck. Keep the breathing under control. Make sure to have a relatively big breakfast. Bring a snack along. And have a decent night's sleep. And again, best of luck.